It's a warm summer Monday in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, a thriving city built on the tobacco industry and multiple educational institutions.
We have Winston-Salem State University, as well as Wake Forest and Salem College. So a lot of people come by way of attending one of those colleges.
It's about 300,000 people here. It's a combination of a small town feel with ambitions to be a big city like Charlotte.
But as most residents enjoy a peaceful evening, one home is erupting in chaos.
19-year-old Jasmine Moore is at home in Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Stop, please!
She's sitting on the couch watching TV when her mother's boyfriend, 52-year-old Fergus Moore, bursts in the front door.
Call 911.
What happened?
Hurry.
He's dripping in blood. It's all over him.
I got stabbed.
I imagine she probably was overwhelmed just seeing Fergus bloody.
But that's not the worst part.
He said somebody just tried to kill your mom.
She's in the driveway bleeding out.
Call 911. Your mama been stabbed.
43-year-old Cheryl Bethea had worked hard to build a good life for her family.
She was bold, tenacious, had a big, beautiful smile.
She had a huge heart. She loved her two children, she loved her grandson, and she loved her sisters.
But Mom always takes care of me.
Mama makes sure she has what she needs.
Anything that I wanted, she made sure me and my brother had it. She just loved us so much.
But it hadn't always been easy.
Cheryl was in foster care when she was younger.
Thankfully, she was able to meet with her blood sister in foster care.
When we were put into our last foster home, we ended up staying with them until we became adults, which is very rare because if you don't adopt, they usually take you from the home.
But she was determined not to let her hardships define her life.
In her early 20s, she got married and started a family of her own.
Cheryl and her husband welcomed a son first, and 2 years later, they had a daughter.
She loved becoming a mom, and she loves her children, period.
However, her marriage was a different story.
Cheryl still had some deep-rooted fears of abandonment and rejection, and that eventually led to her and her first husband separating.
She was married a second time, and that didn't work out either.
She struggled with being abandoned, self-love, lacking love and belonging.
Until, as Cheryl matured into her 30s, she decided to refocus on herself.
She eventually went back to school, and she got her degree in sociology.
She made great grades, basically all A's.
She graduated from Winston-Salem State University, and she was really excited that she was able to do that as a single mother.
We celebrated, and I was proud of her.
Her daughter may have been proud, but Cheryl still craved more.
She was like, I'll be the first one in my family to have my master's. That was her next goal. She was determined.
And she was always on the go.
Cheryl used to be involved in a lot of things. She was in Black Girl Run.
She would go to races and she would run alongside ladies when they were about a quarter of a mile away from the finish line, and she would cheer them across the finish line.
She was also very involved in her church community.
But as her kids neared adulthood, Cheryl faced new challenges.
Her daughter, Jasmine, got pregnant shortly before her high school graduation.
At first, she kind of felt like having a baby, it just wasn't the right time. But once I had the baby, she absolutely loved him.
But for all the joy her grandson brought, there was still something missing.
In her heart, she was looking for companionship and somebody to kind of share life with. And along comes Fergus.
Fergus Moore was a family friend, about 10 years older than Cheryl.
They met at one of our cousins' parties.
They lock eyes from across the room, and really, it was love at first sight.
Hey, I'm Cheryl. I was wondering when you was gonna come over here and say hello.
Okay, I'm Fergus. Nice to meet you, Cheryl. How you doing?
I'm doing fine.
They just connected so well.
And even though Cheryl had every intention of taking things slow, she didn't hold back.
So I seen you looking at me.
Cheryl and Fergus were inseparable. They were seeing each other every day, hanging out and having a blast.
Eventually, they decided that they wanted to move in together.
After years of raising her kids on her own, Cheryl felt she finally had someone else to help share the load.
She is happy about having a helping hand around the house.
She wanted to marry this man.
But now, everything Cheryl has worked so hard for may be in jeopardy.
Please hurry.
I don't know what to do. I'm panicking. I can't find no phones.
After what feels like forever, she finds one.
911, what's your emergency?
It's my mom. She's hurt.
The call came out, and it was assault on a female.
Come on, baby, stay with me.
When first responders arrive, they find Fergus on the ground, holding on to Cheryl.
He's gonna be okay, baby. They're here now.
He seems to be comforting her and rocking her.
But Fergus is also in grave danger.
He was stabbed deep. It was a sucking chest wound.
The officers at the scene render what aid they can.
I knew that EMS was coming, so I'm laying direct pressure on this guy, and I was like, hang on, man.
Save her, man!
But all Fergus could think about was Cheryl.
He's saying, I don't know what happened. He stabbed us. Is she going to be okay?
43-year-old Cheryl Bethea had overcome a lifetime of tragedy and hardship to build a happy life for herself, her children, and her grandchild.
She was a hard worker every day, making sure she provide for her children.
She just loved us so much.
But now police are scrambling to save Cheryl and her boyfriend, 52-year-old Fergus Moore, after a vicious knife attack in their front yard.
She was severely stabbed multiple times.
Fergus had also been stabbed in the chest.
I remember thinking, this is a whole lot worse than originally we thought.
And it's about to get even worse.
It's too late for Cheryl. Her carotid artery was severed.
Oh, no.
Oh, no!
The EMT pronounces her dead. And as Fergus is loaded into the ambulance and rushed to the hospital, the officers secure the scene.
Miss Bethea was kind of wedged between the car tire and the curb.
It was a very disturbing scene.
Let's go.
And as detectives arrive to piece together what happened, it's immediately clear this was no random attack.
There was no property taken from either Cheryl or Fergus, so it didn't appear to be a robbery.
The severity of the injuries also made it seem like the attacker could have known either Cheryl or Fergus.
Stabbing someone is so personal.
And as the sun sets, detectives head inside to speak to Cheryl's daughter, Jasmine.
Thank you. We'll take it from there.
After they got the crime scene together, they asked me questions.
We're sorry for your loss. Can you walk us through the evening before everything happened?
Well, Mom came home from work and decided to go for a run before dinner.
I'm getting ready to go for a run, baby.
Okay,
I'll
all
be
right.
back in just a little bit.
All right, be safe.
She'd only been gone a few minutes when Fergus came home.
Where's your mother?
Baby's sleeping. She went out for a run.
Fergus came home from work early.
Fergus paced about in the house for a bit and then decided to go outside and wait for Cheryl's arrival.
Had a good run.
After a while, her mom did come in.
I'm gonna start on dinner.
And after starting dinner, Cheryl went back outside with Fergus.
Jasmine said she did hear Fergus and her mom talking in the background outside, but she didn't really pay much attention.
Did you hear anyone else out there with them?
No, not that I could tell.
But after a while, she thought she heard screaming.
But before she could actually get outside to see what was happening, Fergus was at the door screaming to call 911 because somebody had attacked her mother and tried to kill him.
According to Jasmine, she looked for the phone to call police.
I'm panicking, like my adrenaline is rushing.
I only went out there once the police got here.
That's when I seen my mom wedged in between the concrete and my car. She was lifeless. And I just dropped to my knees. It was blood everywhere. It was all on the door. It was all on the concrete. It was blood running down the street. And it was really traumatizing for me.
Oh, no! She's not gone, is she?
Do you know if your mother had any enemies?
Not at all.
Her mother was church-going. Her mother was very involved in the community.
Who would want to do this to her? Or Fergus?
But when detectives ask about her mother's relationship with Fergus, Jasmine admits there were some issues.
It just wasn't good.
Jasmine says that the two would argue constantly.
My mom actually told me she was going to leave him.
Cheryl Bethea's daughter has just told detectives investigating the brutal stabbing that left the 43-year-old dead that her mother had been planning to break up with her boyfriend, Fergus Moore.
And Jasmine said that suited her just fine.
In the beginning, Jasmine and her brother were a little bit leery about Fergus coming into their lives.
Part of that was because when he met Cheryl, Fergus was unemployed.
Fergus was a little bit down on his luck and was trying to find a way to kind of get back on track.
I couldn't really have any say-so in who my mom dated. Like, at the end of the day, it's her decision.
Jasmine says that at first, their worries about Fergus appeared to be ill-founded.
Jasmine told the detectives that everything started out really well.
They got along and it was good.
Their mother seemed to be so happy and felt like she had finally found a partner.
Once they started dating, Cheryl helped Fergus get back on his feet.
She found him a job at a chicken plant.
He also moved in.
They were a little surprised at how quickly things moved, but he was able to help with the family responsibilities and the household bills, and both of them seemed really happy.
However, it wasn't long before things started to change.
That's when, like, I guess his true colors were coming out.
He would come home with shoes and clothes and all sorts of things for himself. And Cheryl felt like he wasn't contributing to the household as much.
So that became a strain in their relationship.
They started fighting about money.
And Cheryl's daughter was often caught in the middle.
He would say nasty words to me. He would call me all kinds of names.
The house was just very tense, and it was very uncomfortable for everyone.
It became such a disruption in their environment that her brother didn't even want to be home most of the time.
And Fergus apparently felt the same way.
He was gone, doing something else, working. Like, he didn't really interact with us.
He would find any excuse that he could to be out of the house.
Jasmine says that her mother had eventually asked Fergus to move out.
She just was done, fed up.
I felt like she was kind of like, what did I get myself into?
But Fergus soon found a way to creep back in.
She did like him, care for him. She was like, everybody gets second chances.
She let him move back in?
Yeah.
Can't take on this responsibility by myself.
And despite the chances she gave him, Fergus never changed.
They'd fight, she'd kick him out, and then he'd come crawling back.
They would smooth things over and the process would start again.
To be honest, I think that's what they were talking about before they got attacked.
The detectives suspect Jasmine may be right.
Maybe this time, Cheryl told Fergus to get out for good.
They were asking me, did he do it? And I was like, I'm not really sure.
I mean, they'd fight a lot, but for him to actually kill her, I don't know.
When you have a loved one who is in a relationship where they're not being treated how you would want them and hope for them to be treated, it is complex and hard.
I've never experienced anything like this before. So this was all new to me, and I didn't really know how to handle the situation.
When they wrap up the interview, the detectives ask if they can take a look around the house.
Sure, if you think it'll help.
Investigators searched the house, trying to piece together what exactly happened here. At first, they didn't really notice much. However, when they went into the kitchen, they noticed a knife block on the kitchen counter.
One knife is missing.
And in addition to a possible murder weapon, detectives find a potential motive in some of Cheryl's papers.
They found a restraining order.
One that Cheryl had taken out against Fergus.
It was filed that very same day.
Detectives investigating the brutal murder of Cheryl Bethea have discovered that just hours before her death, she had taken out a restraining order against her boyfriend, Fergus Moore.
But Fergus was also severely injured in the knife attack that killed Cheryl.
So Fergus is currently in surgery while they're searching the house and finding these things.
Which does give credence to his claim that some unknown assailant attacked them both.
However, the detectives can't ignore the fact that the restraining order gives Fergus a solid motive.
Is it possible that Fergus had killed Cheryl and then stabbed himself to deflect suspicion?
It seems far-fetched, given the severity of his injuries.
To actually perform this act and then to take it even further to inflict a wound on himself. That's insanity.
At that point, you have your doubts about what happened, but you have to shake every tree and see what falls out of it.
The detectives head back to the station and dig into Fergus's background.
They discovered that about a decade ago, Fergus had served 4 years in prison for armed robbery.
He has numerous domestic violence offenses against women on his record.
The earliest was way back in 1989.
All he got was a $65 fine and probation.
And based on the police records, it appears that Cheryl had suffered similar abuse.
Cheryl herself had filed reports of domestic violence against Fergus very recently.
For the detectives, it's yet more evidence suggesting that Fergus isn't just a second victim.
But until he's out of surgery and in recovery, the detectives aren't able to question him.
They decide to speak with Cheryl's sister in the meantime to get some more background information.
It was already all over the news, and that was just the worst experience I've had in my life.
Though devastated, Cassandra agrees to come down to the station for an interview.
We're sorry for your loss.
Her immediate response was that she was afraid something like this would happen. She says that as much as Cheryl tried to downplay any abuse, she knew for a fact that it was an abusive relationship.
I was on the phone with her one time, and they started cussing at each other, and they were arguing.
She says she questioned Cheryl several times, and Cheryl just said that that's how they are with each other.
It's like, you know, it's none of your business. Oh, this is just how we do.
Did you ever see him hit her?
Well, no, not directly.
But she did see the results of what had transpired.
She had a black eye one time, and I asked her about it, and she said she fell and hit the table.
But that never sat well with Cassandra.
She said Cheryl even made several posts on social media talking about her clumsiness, and she believed it was just a way to deflect from the injuries.
It was like she never wanted us to know her business.
The problem, of course, with domestic violence, people who are in domestic violence situations, is they don't tell anyone.
But recently, she started to open up a little bit.
Eventually, Cheryl said that Fergus was violent with her. And when he was drunk, it got much worse.
He even threatened to kill Cheryl.
And according to what Cheryl told Cassandra, he may have tried too.
It got so bad that Cheryl confided that one time, Fergus had smothered her with a blanket and beat her with a hammer.
Cassandra tells detectives that Cheryl started spending as much time as she could outside of the house.
When she wasn't able to be outside of the house, she would make up any excuse for her sister to come over.
She really wanted someone there because she was beginning to fear for her life.
I made her promise that she would file a restraining order. And that's exactly what she did.
If it is granted, then if the people do share a residence together, then the person who is the defendant, who has been identified as the abuser, has to leave that residence.
But it's beginning to look like it was too little, too late.
She's not exactly sure how Fergus could have found out about the restraining order, but she believes that when he did discover it, he was so enraged at the thought of losing permanent access to Cheryl that he just exploded in anger.
For the detectives, it's an all too familiar scenario.
You offer the help, you offer the brochures, you lock up the assailant, you'll take them to the battered women's shelter. You do all the things, only to go back 6 months later and deal with, if not the same thing, something worse.
We see folks in our community who are killed by domestic violence, and it happens every year. A lot of times, those folks were trying to handle it on their own, and it takes community.
Oftentimes, it's incredibly difficult for people who are involved in abusive relationships to leave them.
But before law enforcement can make any sort of arrest, they need to speak with Fergus.
Homicide.
And by morning, it looks like they'll get their chance.
Fergus is finally awake and alert out of surgery.
And he says he's ready to talk.
We'll be right there. Got something. Gotta go.
Detectives have just learned that Cheryl Bethea's boyfriend, Fergus Moore, is out of surgery and ready to discuss the incident that put him in the hospital and left Cheryl dead.
At the scene, Fergus told Cheryl's daughter that an unknown assailant had attacked them both.
No, she's not gone.
The detectives suspect that's a lie.
However, when detectives speak to Fergus in the recovery room, they don't immediately confront him with what they've learned.
We have a few questions, so we need to ask you.
As an investigator, you never want to lead somebody that you're interviewing. You want to hear and observe everything that they're offering.
They start the interview by telling Burgess that Cheryl is dead.
Oh, God.
Burgess immediately breaks down.
Why don't you tell us what happened that night?
Jasmine said you came home early?
Yeah.
Burgess said that he had been frustrated with his job. He had been thinking about leaving for a while, and that was the day he finally decided to submit his resignation.
He thought that he and Cheryl would celebrate.
Although he didn't wait for Cheryl.
Burgess had came home and he already been drinking. He had a whole bottle of liquor in the car and the bottle was basically empty.
When he got home, he asked Jasmine where her mother was, and she said that she had gone out to run. So he decided to go outside, get some fresh air, and wait for her return so that they can talk.
And she did. I mean, that's what we did. We talked about it. You got more time?
Baby. This is a good day for you. You know what to do.
As they were outside talking, a random person just started attacking them.
I tried to stop him, but there wasn't much I could do.
And then when he jumped in and tried to defend Cheryl, he himself got attacked.
Can you describe the guy?
I don't know. It all just happened so fast, man.
Burgess says he was focused on helping to save Cheryl.
But the detectives suspect there's another reason Burgess can't describe Cheryl's killer.
They reveal that they know about the restraining order.
That catches Burgess off guard initially, but eventually he starts to change his tune.
Yeah, she had an order out on me, but it's not what you think.
Burgess says that Cheryl was the one who was abusing him in the relationship.
This is supposed to be a happy thing.
We're not happy. And he admits that prior to the stabbing, they had been having an argument out on the porch.
Pay all the darn bills.
And let me guess, things got out of hand.
Yeah, man, but it wasn't me.
We haven't even talked about this.
Baby, you know how
He says that in the middle of the argument, Cheryl suddenly went inside.
Where you going?
I'm going to start dinner.
Burgess tells police that she grabbed the knife, she came back outside.
That's when she stabbed me. No, what's wrong now?
I'm tired of you.
He says that he had to wrestle her down to get the knife away from her.
That could explain some of the superficial wounds he had on him.
And he said that he started stabbing her because he was in fear for his life.
So why you didn't just say that in the beginning?
I knew how that looked.
He admits that he threw the knife into the bushes and ran up to the front door to ask Jasmine to call 911.
The detectives don't necessarily believe Burgess's story.
But then again, he came pretty close to dying in the attack too.
It could go either way here. It could have been that Cheryl was finally fed up with Burgess and the abuse, and as she went inside to prepare dinner, she grabs a knife from the kitchen block and finally stands up for herself and attacks Burgess. Or it could be that Burgess took the knife, went outside and waited for Cheryl's return and attacked her.
You had a good run?
I did.
We'll be back.
Leaving Burgess in the recovery room, the detectives head back to the crime scene.
If this fella is telling the truth, you have to run every lead down as if what is being told to you is the gospel.
They look in the bushes and they discover the knife.
They are able to match it up to the knives that are from the same block set.
Detectives?
But the real breakthrough comes while one of Cheryl's neighbors approaches the detectives as they're leaving the property.
I didn't want to say anything at first, 'cause I was afraid of what Burgess might do.
She says with Burgess safely in the hospital, she felt that she could tell detectives exactly what she witnessed.
She tells them that she saw everything.
At first, the neighbor's recounting of events matched Fergus's story.
I saw Cheryl leaving for a run.
The neighbor says Fergus came home a few minutes later.
She saw him go inside, and then, a little while later, she noticed him come back outside and pace up and down on the front porch.
And according to the neighbor, when Cheryl came home, she was surprised to see him.
Oh, so this is what we're doing now?
Fergus, what are you doing here?
At first, they seemed to be having a conversation, but it didn't take long before that turned into a yelling match.
Who is he?
He apparently believed that she had been cheating on him.
Who you been seeing?
Don't be ridiculous, Fergus.
Oh, I'm being
nobody.
Cheryl went inside, and according to the neighbor, when she came back, things turned violent.
Cheryl came back outside, and the neighbor said that's when she saw a knife.
You're not supposed to be here.
And the person with the knife was Fergus.
Just start stabbing her.
What is wrong with you?
Cheryl Bethea's neighbor has just revealed to detectives that she witnessed Cheryl's boyfriend, Fergus Moore, attack the 43-year-old mother of two.
What is wrong with you?
She says Cheryl started backing up into her daughter's car, leaned up against the car door, and started begging for her life.
Fergus, please stop!
It seemed like Fergus had already made up in his mind what he was going to do.
He just had so much rage. He just stabbed her over and over.
I don't think there's anything anyone could have done to stop it.
Cheryl had attempted to get away from him, but he did not want to take no for an answer.
Cheryl never stood a chance.
As horrifying as the attack had been, Cheryl's neighbor says what happened next was even more shocking.
The neighbor said that he stabbed himself in the chest.
Thought maybe he was trying to kill himself.
But it wasn't a murder-suicide.
He threw the knife into the bushes and then ran to the house to tell the daughter that they had been attacked.
After he killed Miss Bethea, he probably realized, I better do something to make this look real.
People go to extreme lengths to cover up their crimes.
Once they have the neighbor's statement, the detectives get a warrant for Fergus's arrest.
When Fergus is released from the hospital, he goes right into police custody.
But when detectives confront him with what they've learned from the neighbor, Fergus denies it.
Fergus still maintains that everything that transpired was in self-defense.
And as the case moves toward trial, prosecutors plan to seek the maximum possible penalty.
The prosecutors indicted him for first-degree murder, and they also said that they were going to pursue the death penalty.
Cheryl was stabbed 39 times. And Fergus had several previous convictions and charges for violent offender crimes.
His defense team, however, has another strategy.
The defense team calls Fergus's intellectual capacity into question.
To the dismay of Cheryl's friends and family, the court ordered a mental evaluation.
It's almost like it was a joke to them. That's what it felt like. This man is evil, and he did this, so why are we going through this?
We all was on pins and needles. I just wanted justice for Cheryl and her family.
But the family would be in for a long wait.
They decided that he was incompetent to stand trial.
And therefore, he should be exempt from the death penalty and receive a plea deal.
Based on the findings, the prosecutors agree to a deal.
Fergus enters a guilty plea to the lesser charge of second-degree murder.
Per the terms of the deal, the judge sentences Burgess to 35 to 43 years in prison.
He was 57 at the time.
Burgess tells the court that he understands at his age that sentence is tantamount to a life sentence.
But the people most affected by his crime are still devastated by the outcome.
I was disgusted with him, especially when he tried to play like he was just innocent. That really made me angry. He deserved the death penalty.
What you gonna get done to your hair?
But Mom always takes care of me.
In the aftermath of Cheryl's death, her family does manage to find some solace in preserving Cheryl's legacy.
I promised Cheryl that I would not allow her death to be in vain. So Jasmine and I speak in the community on domestic violence.
Everybody knows that she was a very loving person, and her legacy is never gonna die. We're gonna keep it going.
The family's activism has ultimately led to a foundation that raises awareness about domestic violence.
We wanted to find a way to give back to the community, especially to women who are going through their big changes and journeys, and they have to drop everything and leave.
They hold events and raise money to support women and children in the local domestic violence shelter.
That's kind of how we give back and show love to the community.
But for all the good that's come in the aftermath of Cheryl's death, her family still mourns the loss of the woman they love.
She's very missed. We all miss her.
I got to a point where, okay, I just picked up a paintbrush and a canvas and I just started painting. That's really how I dealt with losing my mom. Every time I did artwork when I was a kid, she would take it to work and she'd be showing it off to her coworkers and her friends, like, look what my baby did. So me doing art is a way to make my mom proud.
Cheryl was taken away too soon. Her presence during her life was very impactful in our community. And it's been 10 years, and people are still talking about how much they love Cheryl and miss her.
On the morning of August 1st, 1966, Austin, Texas, appeared to be moving through a summer day. The University of Texas campus was alive with students, employees, visitors, and traffic, while the tall limestone tower at the center of the university stood above the city like a familiar landmark. No one looking toward the tower that morning could have imagined that, within hours, it would become the center of one of the most shocking acts of mass violence in American history. At the heart of the coming tragedy was a 25-year-old former Marine named Charles Joseph Whitman. To people who knew him, Whitman could appear disciplined, intelligent, ambitious, and ordinary. He had served in the military, studied at the University of Texas, married his wife Kathleen, and tried to build a conventional life. Yet beneath that surface, something had been deteriorating. In the months before August 1st, Whitman experienced disturbing thoughts and physical complaints. He described severe headaches and a growing sense that something was wrong inside his mind. He also wrote about violent impulses that frightened him. At one point, he sought professional help because he recognized that his thoughts were becoming dangerous. Those warnings would later become an important part of the effort to understand what happened, although they did not provide a simple explanation for his actions. The tragedy began inside Whitman's own family. Before he ever reached the University of Texas Tower, Whitman had killed his mother, Margaret, inside her home. He then killed his wife, Kathleen, in their apartment. The killings were not random. They were part of a sequence that showed how far Whitman had already crossed into violence before the public attack began. After the murders, Whitman left behind written material that would later reveal something about his state of mind. He expressed confusion about his behavior and asked that his brain be examined after his death. He wanted investigators to determine whether there was a physical reason for the changes he had experienced. But the full meaning of those notes would only become clear after the events at the tower. Whitman then prepared for the final stage of his plan. He gathered weapons, ammunition, food, water, and other supplies. He transported much of the equipment toward the University of Texas Tower using a handcart. The quantity of material demonstrated that this was not simply a spontaneous outburst. He had thought about where he wanted to go, what he would need, and how he could remain in position for an extended period. The observation deck of the tower offered a terrifying advantage. From high above the campus, Whitman could see much of central Austin. People below had little idea that they were exposed, and there was almost no immediate way for ordinary civilians to reach the gunman. Shortly before noon, Whitman reached the observation area. What happened next unfolded with devastating speed. He positioned himself inside the tower and began firing downward. The first shots transformed a normal university day into chaos. People on the ground initially struggled to understand where the gunfire was coming from. Then the pattern became clear. A gunman was firing from high above, and anyone moving through the exposed areas could become a target. Students ran for cover. Workers abandoned their positions. Drivers stopped or tried to move away. Some people dropped to the ground, while others hid behind cars, buildings, walls, or anything that might provide protection. Police officers responding to the emergency faced an unprecedented tactical problem. The shooter was elevated, heavily armed, and able to observe a wide area. Approaching him directly would be dangerous. At the same time, every minute that passed created another opportunity for more people to be injured. Across Austin, news spread rapidly. Calls flooded authorities with reports of gunfire and casualties. Officers began moving toward the university while trying to determine exactly where Whitman was positioned. The attack was no longer confined to one building. The surrounding streets and campus spaces had become part of a vast and unpredictable danger zone. Whitman continued firing from above. Later investigations determined that he fired approximately 150 rounds during an attack that lasted about 96 minutes. Statistics could not capture what those minutes meant for the people trapped below. Ordinary routines had disappeared. Every movement could attract attention. Every distant crack of gunfire carried the possibility that another person had been struck. Meanwhile, police searched for a way to reach the tower. Among the officers who would ultimately move toward Whitman's position were Ramiro Ray Martinez and Houston McCoy. Their actions would become central to the final moments of the attack. But before the confrontation could happen, Austin had to endure a prolonged period of uncertainty. From the streets below, people could see the tower but could not know exactly what was happening inside. Some wounded victims waited for assistance. Others remained hidden, afraid that moving into the open would expose them. The University of Texas campus had become a place of fear. Above it all stood Whitman. He had chosen a position that made him extremely difficult to stop. Yet the police were closing in. The final confrontation was approaching. For nearly an hour and a half, the city had been forced to live beneath the shadow of the tower. Then, as officers found a path toward the observation deck, the balance began to change. Whitman's position was no longer unreachable. The men moving toward him knew that the final approach could cost their lives. They also knew that stopping him was the only way to prevent the shooting from continuing. By the time they reached the top, the attack had already claimed lives and injured dozens of people. But the nightmare was not yet over. The next few moments would bring the gunfire to an end, while leaving Austin with a question that would survive for generations. How could a seemingly ordinary young man have prepared for such unimaginable violence, and what had been happening inside his mind before he climbed that tower? The final minutes of the University of Texas Tower shooting began with a decision that required extraordinary courage. Charles Whitman remained above the city, armed and dangerous, while police officers searched for a way to reach him. For those trapped below, the tower seemed almost unreachable. Yet several officers refused to accept that the shooting could continue indefinitely. Ramiro Ray Martinez was among them. A former Marine himself, Martinez understood the danger of confronting an armed attacker in a fortified position. Houston McCoy, another Austin police officer, also moved toward the tower. Their objective was simple but terrifying: reach the observation deck and stop Whitman before he could kill anyone else. The officers eventually made their way upward. Every step brought them closer to a gunman who had spent the previous hour firing down at people across the campus and surrounding streets. They had no guarantee that they would survive the encounter. They also knew that hesitation could mean another victim below. As Martinez and McCoy approached the observation area, they encountered the physical obstacles that separated them from Whitman. The tower had narrow spaces, doors, and elevated positions that made the final approach difficult. But eventually, they reached the area where Whitman was positioned. The confrontation that followed ended the attack. Whitman was shot and killed by the officers. After nearly 96 minutes, the gunfire from the tower finally stopped. The city that had been living under the threat of an unseen shooter could begin to breathe again. But there was no sense of victory at the scene. The damage had already been done. Across the University of Texas campus and nearby streets, people were wounded, dying, or searching desperately for friends and family. Emergency personnel moved through areas that only minutes earlier had been ordinary public spaces. Victims were transported for medical treatment, while investigators began securing the tower and documenting what Whitman had left behind. The final toll was devastating. 15 people were killed, including Whitman, and 31 others were wounded. Some victims had been students. Others were employees, visitors, or people who happened to be passing through the area. Their lives had intersected with Whitman's plan for only a few seconds, yet the consequences would last forever. For Austin, the realization was difficult to comprehend. The University of Texas was not simply a collection of classrooms and offices. It was one of the city's defining institutions, a place associated with education, youth opportunity, and ordinary routines. On August 1st, 1966, that sense of security had been shattered from above. Investigators now faced a second task, understanding how Whitman had reached that point. Inside the tower, they discovered evidence of extensive preparation. Whitman had brought numerous weapons and a large supply of ammunition. He had also carried food and other necessities, suggesting that he expected to remain in position for some time. The equipment was not something a person could assemble accidentally. It reflected planning, intention, and a clear decision to transform the tower into a firing position. That discovery made the case even more disturbing. Whitman had not simply lost control in a sudden moment and found himself inside the tower. Before arriving there, he had killed his mother and his wife. He had gathered weapons and supplies. He had transported them to the university. He had selected a location that gave him a commanding view of the surrounding area. The attack therefore appeared to be the final stage of a plan that had begun much earlier. Yet Whitman's personal writings introduced another dimension. In the days before the killings, he had described disturbing thoughts and physical symptoms. He wrote about intense headaches and acknowledged that he was experiencing impulses he did not fully understand. He had even expressed a desire for doctors to examine his brain after his death. That request would become extraordinarily important. After Whitman's body was examined, doctors discovered a tumor in his brain. It was located in the region of the hypothalamus, and later accounts identified it as an astrocytoma. The finding immediately raised questions about whether a physical abnormality had contributed to his behavior. The question was impossible to answer with certainty. A brain tumor could not erase the fact that Whitman had made a series of deliberate decisions. He had acquired weapons, prepared supplies, killed members of his family, traveled to the university, and established himself in the tower. These actions required planning. At the same time, the tumor became part of the historical discussion because Whitman himself had suspected that something might be wrong inside his brain. His request for an examination suggested that he was aware of changes within himself, but could not explain them. For decades, the case would therefore occupy an uncomfortable space between criminal responsibility, mental health, neurological disease, and personal choice. Austin was left with another painful reality. The warning signs had existed, but recognizing warning signs is not the same as knowing that a mass killing is about to occur. Whitman's behavior before the attack had been disturbing, but no one could predict the scale of the violence that would follow. The University of Texas Tower shooting soon became a landmark case in the history of American mass violence. It exposed weaknesses in police tactics, emergency response, and public understanding of armed attacks from elevated positions. Officers had been forced to improvise under circumstances for which few had prepared. The lessons would influence future responses to similar incidents. But behind every tactical lesson were human beings whose lives had been permanently changed. Families lost sons, daughters, husbands, wives, and friends. Survivors carried physical injuries and memories of the attack. Witnesses remembered hiding behind cars, buildings, and walls while shots came from a place they could see but could not reach. The tower remained standing after the tragedy. That morning, the university continued. Austin continued. But August 1st, 1966, became a permanent dividing line in the city's history, marking the moment when an ordinary summer day became a national symbol of mass violence. In the hours after Charles Whitman was killed, Austin struggled to understand what had happened. The danger was gone, but questions were only beginning. Investigators entered the University of Texas Tower and documented the scene. What they found revealed the extent of Whitman's preparation and made clear that the attack had not been an impulsive act created in one moment. Whitman had carried a remarkable amount of equipment to the observation deck. Weapons, ammunition, food, water, and other supplies were positioned around him. He had created a fortified position high above the campus, choosing a location that allowed him to watch people moving below while keeping himself difficult to reach. The physical evidence suggested patience as well as intent. He had expected the attack to continue for some time. That discovery forced investigators to look backward. Who was Charles Whitman before he became the man on the tower? Whitman had been born in Lake Worth, Florida, in 1941. He grew up in a strict household and was raised by parents whose marriage was troubled. His father, Charles Adolph Whitman, was described as demanding and controlling. His mother, Margaret, was deeply religious and devoted to her children. Whitman became an excellent student and developed a strong interest in discipline, achievement, and military service. As a young man, he joined the Marine Corps. His military career gave him weapons training and exposed him to a structured environment in which precision and obedience were valued. He later attended the University of Texas, where he studied engineering before his academic path became complicated. Whitman married Kathleen Leisner in 1962. To people outside the marriage, the couple could appear relatively ordinary. They built a life together while Whitman continued to struggle with financial pressure, academic difficulties, and personal conflict. Over time, however, signs of instability became more visible. Whitman experienced intense headaches that he described as increasingly severe. He also reported frightening thoughts and impulses. His writings from the period before the massacre show that he was aware of disturbing changes within himself. He described feeling overwhelmed by thoughts that seemed increasingly difficult to control. One of the most disturbing entries was written shortly before the killings. Whitman expressed concern that something was wrong with him and asked that his brain be examined after his death. The request would later become one of the most discussed details in the entire case. But before anyone could investigate the meaning of those words, Whitman had already made his final decisions. On July 31st, the day before the tower attack, he killed his mother. He then returned to the apartment where he lived with Kathleen and killed his wife. The exact sequence and motivation surrounding these murders have been examined repeatedly, but Whitman left behind writings that indicated he had consciously decided to end their lives. The killings inside the family changed the nature of the coming investigation. The tower shooting was not an isolated eruption of violence. It followed two murders committed in private, making the entire day part of one escalating chain of events. After killing his wife, Whitman spent the remaining hours preparing for what would happen next. He gathered firearms and ammunition and assembled supplies. He transported them toward the university, eventually taking them into the tower. The amount of preparation meant that Whitman had time to reconsider. That detail has remained central to discussions about responsibility. Even if Whitman was suffering from a serious psychological or neurological problem, he still performed a sequence of actions that required organization. He selected weapons. He obtained ammunition. He gathered provisions. He transported everything to the tower. He chose his position and waited. The discovery of a brain tumor after his death complicated the picture. An autopsy revealed an astrocytoma in Whitman's brain, located near the hypothalamus. Researchers and doctors subsequently debated whether the tumor could have influenced his emotions, impulses, or behavior. The possibility was compelling because Whitman himself had complained of headaches and had specifically requested a post-mortem examination. Yet the existence of a tumor did not provide a complete explanation. There is no simple medical formula that can transform a violent act into the product of one physical abnormality. Whitman's behavior developed within a much larger context that included family conflict, personal distress, military experience, marriage problems, financial concerns, academic pressures, and his own decisions. Investigators also reconstructed Whitman's movements and examined his written notes. They discovered that he had thought extensively about death and violence. His notes showed that he understood the seriousness of what he was planning. In some passages, he seemed frightened by himself. In others, he appeared determined to continue. The question of whether he wanted help, whether he believed help was impossible, or whether he ultimately chose violence for reasons that only he understood has never been answered completely. Because he died on the tower, investigators could never conduct a full interrogation. The man who might have explained his final motives was gone. There were his notes, his medical history, statements from people who knew him, physical evidence from the tower, and the memories of survivors and witnesses. Each fragment revealed something, but none provided a complete portrait. For Austin, the tragedy exposed a new kind of threat. Police had to improvise against an attacker positioned hundreds of feet above the ground. There was no established playbook for such an event. Officers worked with limited information while civilians remained exposed. The courage of those who eventually climbed the tower became part of the historical record. Ramiro Martinez and Houston McCoy, supported by others, moved toward the source of the gunfire and confronted Whitman at enormous personal risk. Their actions ended the attack. Families wanted answers. Survivors wanted to understand why they had been targeted. Doctors wanted to know whether Whitman's brain had contributed to his behavior. Law enforcement agencies considered what could be learned from the response. The University of Texas Tower shooting was no longer only a crime committed by one man. It had become a case study in violence, crisis response, mental health, neurological disease, and human responsibility. And beneath all those questions was the most painful one. Could anyone have stopped Charles Whitman before he reached the tower? That question would follow Austin for generations. In the weeks and months after the University of Texas Tower shooting, Austin was forced to confront a tragedy that seemed almost impossible to comprehend. The immediate danger had ended, but the investigation was only beginning. Detectives had to reconstruct Charles Whitman's final days, determine how he obtained his weapons, understand the murders of his mother and wife, and examine the warning signs that had appeared before the attack. Whitman's actions inside the tower were horrifying, but they were connected to what had happened in his family and to the increasingly troubled state of his mind. Whitman's relationship with his parents was an important part of that history. His father, Charles Adolph Whitman, was a strict and demanding man who expected discipline from his children. His mother, Margaret, was deeply religious and emotionally devoted to her sons. The marriage between his parents eventually deteriorated, and the family environment became increasingly complicated. Whitman left home, joined the Marine Corps, and developed a reputation for discipline. Military service provided him with firearms training and a structured routine. He later attended the University of Texas, where he studied several subjects and attempted to build a future with Kathleen, the woman he had married. Yet people close to him later described troubling changes. He became increasingly preoccupied with headaches and emotional distress. He viết phần 6, không có gợi ý âm thanh, viết liền mạch, không gạch đầu dòng, không trích dẫn, xuống dòng, viết đúng độ dài mà tôi yêu cầu, bắt buộc, bằng tiếng Anh, đúng đủ độ dài 1.000 từ số mẹ tim công lai thắt he cao not control his house. In the months before the shooting, Whitman wrote about violent fantasies and disturbing impulses. He recognized that these thoughts were abnormal. He even sought help from a psychiatrist at the university. That detail has become one of the most significant parts of the case because it demonstrated that Whitman was not completely unaware of his deteriorating condition. Still, the warning signs did not reveal exactly what was coming. No one could have known that the troubled student asking for help would soon kill his family and attack strangers from the university tower. Whitman also experienced serious financial and academic pressures. His education had been interrupted, and his relationship with his father had become strained. His marriage to Kathleen was affected by the instability surrounding him. These circumstances formed part of the background investigators examined after his death. Then came the final days. Every new discovery seemed to answer one question while creating another, deeper mystery for investigators. Whitman began organizing the equipment he would need. He obtained firearms and ammunition and gathered supplies that would allow him to remain inside the tower. He also prepared written notes. The planning showed that his intentions had become increasingly concrete. On July 31st, Whitman went to his mother's home. She was killed there. Later, he returned to the apartment where Kathleen was staying. She was also killed. The murders were deeply personal. Whitman had not simply selected strangers as his first victims. He began with the two people closest to him. Afterward, he continued preparing for the public attack. His notes contained explanations, observations, and requests. One of his most important requests was that his brain be examined after death. He wanted doctors to determine whether there was a physical explanation for the changes he had experienced. That request would become significant after the autopsy. When doctors examined Whitman's brain, they discovered a tumor. The tumor was an astrocytoma located near the hypothalamus. The discovery immediately generated speculation about whether the growth could have affected Whitman's emotions, judgment, aggression, or impulse control. The neurological finding was important, but it did not settle the case. A tumor could not automatically explain every decision Whitman made. He had demonstrated planning, organization, and awareness. He had selected his victims, gathered supplies, transported equipment, and chosen the tower because of its strategic position. At the same time, the medical discovery could not simply be dismissed. Whitman had reported severe headaches, disturbing thoughts, and psychological changes. He had specifically asked for an examination of his brain. His own concerns made the tumor impossible to ignore. Was Whitman suffering from a neurological condition that influenced his behavior? Did psychological distress push him toward violence? Did family conflict, personal pressures, and other circumstances contribute? Or was the tumor incidental to choices he consciously made? Investigators and physicians could debate these questions, but Whitman could no longer provide an explanation. His death on the tower meant there would be no courtroom trial and no prolonged interrogation. There would be no opportunity for prosecutors to question him about his motives or for defense attorneys to challenge his statements. For the victims' families, however, medical theories could never erase the human consequences. 15 people had died, including Whitman, and 31 others had been wounded. Each number represented a person with a family, a history, and plans that were interrupted without warning. The survivors carried memories of hiding beneath cars, behind buildings, and wherever they believed the tower could not reach them. Some suffered physical injuries. Others carried emotional wounds that remained long after the campus returned to normal. The University of Texas also changed. The tower became associated with the tragedy, and security procedures gradually evolved. Police agencies studied the response and considered how officers should confront an attacker firing from an elevated position. The lessons were painful, but they became part of American law enforcement history. Yet the deepest lesson was not tactical. It was about uncertainty. Whitman had shown signs of distress. He had expressed disturbing thoughts. He had sought help. He had complained about physical symptoms. And still, no one understood that he was preparing to commit one of the deadliest attacks in the country's history. That gap between warning signs and catastrophe would become one of the enduring questions surrounding the case. The tower remained standing, but its meaning had changed forever. And for Austin, the story of Charles Whitman was no longer only the story of one terrible morning. It had become a warning about how violence can develop quietly, how difficult it can be to recognize its destination, and how devastating the consequences can become when preparation finally meets opportunity. Decades after the University of Texas Tower shooting, the name Charles Whitman remained attached to one of the most disturbing questions in American criminal history. How should society understand a person who appears capable of ordinary life, yet becomes capable of extraordinary violence? Whitman was not a mysterious stranger who suddenly appeared in Austin. He had lived among other people, attended school, served in the military, married, worked, and maintained relationships. His life contained ambitions and disappointments. Yet beneath that surface, personal pressures, troubling thoughts, physical symptoms, and deliberate choices were moving toward catastrophe. Physicians found an astrocytoma near the hypothalamus during the autopsy. Whitman had complained about severe headaches and written about frightening impulses, making the discovery seem like a possible explanation for changes in his behavior. But explanation and excuse are not the same thing. Whitman had planned the attack. He had gathered firearms and ammunition, prepared food and water, transported his equipment to the tower, and selected a position that gave him a broad view of the campus. Before that, he had killed his mother and wife. The sequence demonstrated organization and purpose. The tumor could not simply be dismissed as irrelevant. Whitman himself had asked for his brain to be examined. He apparently suspected that something inside his body might be affecting his mind. His request became haunting after doctors found the abnormality. The case therefore entered an area where criminal investigation and medical science overlapped. Could a neurological disorder influence aggression? Could it alter judgment or emotional control? Could it intensify impulses that might otherwise have remained under control? These questions were difficult to answer, especially because Whitman was dead and could never describe his experiences in his own words. Another mystery involved the warnings that came before the massacre. Whitman had experienced distress and had sought professional assistance. He had described violent thoughts. People around him had seen changes in his behavior. Yet none of those signs clearly announced that he was preparing to become a mass murderer. Once a tragedy has occurred, earlier behavior can seem like a perfect prediction. People rarely know which troubling statements will remain thoughts and which will become actions. Whitman's case became important partly because it exposed that uncertainty. There was also the question of access. In 1966, American society had very different expectations about firearms, campus security, and emergency response. The idea of a gunman occupying a high tower and firing into crowds was almost unimaginable. Police officers were not operating with the specialized equipment, tactics, or coordinated response systems that would develop in later decades. The officers who responded had to improvise. They faced an attacker they could barely reach and a landscape filled with potential victims. Some officers attempted to return fire from the ground. Others helped move wounded people to safety. Eventually, officers made their way into the tower and climbed toward the observation deck. Ramiro Martinez and Houston McCoy became central figures in the final confrontation. Their approach required them to move directly toward the danger rather than away from it. When they reached Whitman's position, the shooting finally ended. Their actions demonstrated another important part of the case. The outcome was not determined only by Whitman's preparation. It was also shaped by the decisions of people who refused to let him continue. Afterward, the investigation expanded beyond Austin. The tower shooting became a subject of study for police departments, psychologists, neurologists, historians, and criminologists. It was examined as an early example of a modern mass shooting, long before that term became common in public discussion. A structure that had been associated with education and civic identity became permanently connected to violence. Generations of students would know that people had once been targeted from its observation deck. Yet the tower itself remained part of university life. The campus could continue functioning, but the memory of those killed could not simply be erased. The people who died had been walking through the same spaces where future students would study, meet friends, and attend classes. The survivors carried the story forward. Some remembered the confusion of the first shots. Others remembered strangers helping one another, police officers taking enormous risks, or the sudden realization that the danger was coming from above. These memories became part of Austin's collective history. For investigators, however, the final mystery remained Whitman's inner world. His writings provided fragments, but not a complete explanation. His medical condition raised possibilities, but not certainty. His family history revealed conflict but could not account for every decision. His military experience explained his familiarity with weapons, but did not explain why he chose to use them against civilians. Every possible explanation left something unanswered. That is why the University of Texas Tower shooting remains significant more than half a century later. It is not simply a story about a gunman, a tower, or a single terrible afternoon. It is a case about the limits of prediction and the difficulty of understanding human violence before it happens. Whitman's death ended the investigation into his future, but it did not end the questions surrounding his past. The evidence could reconstruct what he did. It could identify where he went and what he carried. It could reveal the physical condition found in his brain. But it could never completely reveal what he believed during those final hours. The passage of time has not made the event easier to categorize. Instead, it has added layers of interpretation, with each generation asking whether the tragedy could have been prevented and what lessons should be carried forward. Those questions remain as important as facts themselves. And perhaps that is the most unsettling part of the case. The tower still stands above Austin, unchanged in its basic form. The city has grown around it, and generations have passed since 1966. Yet the memory of that day remains embedded in the history of the University of Texas. 15 lives were lost, 31 people were wounded, and countless others were changed forever. The shooting ended when officers reached Whitman. The questions did not.